So hello, very warm welcome to the VAR show, the show which talks about various major football leagues in detail. Today we are going to continue theme of interviews, and we have Mr. Gerry Armstrong, who has played for the likes of Tottenham, Watford, Real Mallorca, and among a host of other teams, and also represented Northern Ireland over almost a decade. First of all, I would like to first thank Jerry for coming. Like doing this, horrible, or for lack of better word, horrible time. Where everyone is suffering from some sort of the other, whether directly from the virus or maybe from loneliness or maybe from just doing nothing, like just being bored at home. So first, I would like to thank Jerry for taking out time and coming on the show during this time bad phase. And I would like to first ask you, how are you and what have you been doing, during this time where it has been difficult for many people all around the world?
Thanks for inviting me on the show. First and foremost, Shubhashish. Fingers crossed, I'm doing okay. Um, it's a difficult time for everyone. I've tried to keep myself busy. There's not much you can do in terms of commentating, which is something I've done for a long time. You can't go to the games. You can't commentate from the games. I get the odd occasion where I can do a Zoom call and interact, but we've been running a show called Gerry and Friends for 47 weeks now, on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock UK time. We started to try and pick people's spirits up, give them something to smile about and look forward to. And it developed and it grew. And now it's really going well. And I've had lots of stars on who I've played football with, the likes of Ozzy Ardiles and Glenn Hoddle, who were my teammates at Tottenham. I've also had John Barnes and Luther Blissett, who were my teammates at Watford. Most of the international team, Pat Jennings, Sammy McIlroy, Norman Whiteside, Jimmy Nicholl, Billy Hamilton, most of the international players I played football with, I've had them on the show as well. But we've changed the show a little bit and we've developed it to the extent that we bring on singers, entertainers. And I've had Ricky Warwick, who's the lead singer with Thin Lizzy. I did a Zoom call with him from California. He came on and he sang for us, and we chatted about his career and about coming from Northern Ireland and about music. We've had Johnny Quinn, the drummer from Snow Patrol, and he's a relative. He's my wife's cousin, so he came on and we chatted about Snow Patrol and how it's affected them. But I don't think there's any business or any person or any group that it hasn't affected in the world. And the world has changed dramatically in the last year. And I think some things you can look at, people are now looking back to how they lived 15, 20, 25 years ago. And I think that's a good thing, because sometimes you can become too technical and you forget the important things, which is communication and looking after each other. And those have come out in the last 8 or 9 months. Those are the things that have been highlighted. So I'm pleased to say we've had actors, actresses. We had Jimmy Nesbitt, who's a good friend of mine, who's a famous actor from Northern Ireland. And we've had Brona Gallagher, who's from The Commitments, another actress. And we've had lots of different people, but I'm trying to put smiles on people's faces on a Thursday night. My wife has suffered really badly from depression over the last 10, 15 years. And she's talked about her feelings, and she's had people coming out and talking to her and saying that they feel the same, and they feel, that they need to communicate. So the well-being is something that's been paramount for us. And that is, I think that's going to be something that's going to follow us even when the pandemic is all over, and we do conquer this virus. I think that's something that's going to continue.
Definitely, hopefully. And I have personally followed, not maybe religiously, but few episodes here and there, and it's an amazing show. And if anyone from this part of the world, that is Nepal or India, it's I think around 5 hours ahead of UK. So probably you need to tune in early hours of Friday morning or late hours of Thursday, like night of Thursday. And also you can, I think, find it recorded on Facebook and YouTube if that options are there, so you can rewatch it later on. But maybe probably you can't ask questions what you would have wanted to ask. So yeah, so if anyone wants to watch, do watch. And yeah, so that's I wanted, like, I'll not touch on COVID because it's very well documented all around the world, and I'll touch more on football probably and your career, because that's something which probably people will be more interested than COVID, which has already been well documented, and probably I'm the person with least knowledge who can speak about it. So first very basic question: why football?
I was always into sport as a boy. I loved running. I loved competing. I played lots of football in the street. Growing up in Belfast in the 60s and 70s was not an easy time. It was a difficult time. And I played mostly Gaelic football and hurling. And then when I was older, 16, 17, I started playing a little bit more soccer. And I ended up playing for an Irish league club called Bangor for 3 years. And during that period, we had lots of scouts from Scotland, from England, from Liverpool, from Manchester, from Tottenham, from Arsenal, who came to watch some of the games, and they showed an interest. I got an opportunity to go to Tottenham Hotspur on trial in 1974, and myself and another player called Johnny Jemison went to Tottenham for 4 or 5 days. We did okay, and we didn't hear anything afterwards. We weren't sure what the process was, but about a month or two later, Tottenham made an offer to my club, Bangor Football Club at the time, and the offer was accepted. And I joined Tottenham Hotspur as a professional footballer in 1975.
And it's been a long time, and that you have been involved in football in some form or the other. How has football changed, in that time?
It's changed a lot because it was very much a physical contact sport in '75, and I'm commentating on games in the last 25 years, and I've seen it change dramatically because the rules have changed and the speed of the game has changed and the technical ability has changed. The ball have changed, the football boots have changed, everything is technology. Shubhashish, and it's evolved. But I like the era when I played in the '70s and the '80s. There was a contact, but everybody was honest. No, there was no diving. Nobody would try and dive. And now, you watch the techniques of players, and they're very skillful, and they play for free kicks and they play for fouls, and that's been accepted as part of the game. And I learned that when I went to Spain to play for Real Mallorca. I found out that the players playing at the back were just as technical as the forward players. They had good skills and good technique, and they could dribble the ball just as well as anybody. So, it was a development stage for me, and I learned a lot about Spanish football when I went to play for Real Mallorca for the 2 years. I played against Maradona, and I was just blown away with his quality, how quick he was. But he was strong, even though he was small. He was really strong, and he had unbelievable explosive pace. And his left foot was like a magic wand. He could go past people. He could take it one way and go the other way. Low center of gravity. And I played also in the international team with George Best, and George was a similar player. He was like a ballet dancer. He could go 45 degrees one way and then recorrect and go 45 degrees the other way, and he would go past defenders. And it was a work of art watching him on the field. He was like a dancer, and he had quick feet. So these are the people that the people would notice. And then when you become a commentator and you look for that sort of skill and technique and stardom, I looked at Cristiano Ronaldo and how he could score goals and his athleticism, and he had great feet and scored lots of goals. But then Messi was another one. Messi, I love watching him play because he was so skillful, and he would get kicked, but he'd keep going. So there's lots of pluses in the modern game. But I think maybe there's too much money in it at the moment. I think players are getting paid a lot of money. And I don't begrudge them getting it paid. I just think you look at doctors and you look at surgeons and people who are saving lives, and they don't get the same sort of money as a professional footballer or an actor or a singer. So I think people need to rethink, what's important in life. So those are the things I've learned over the last 10, 15 years.
No, definitely. I at least second you on the last part what you have said. But again, like, isn't that what the general public demands? Because if you do not go to watch a game, then probably the sponsorship value goes down and the salary goes down. Like, if the people they it is basically them who decides what everyone gets, kind of.
Yeah, it is, because if there's no demand, then
Yeah.
you're not successful. But then I do feel that marketing and the way they promote the game now, and bringing companies and business in, it's clever in one way, but in another way, I still see situations where I remember playing in the World Cup in 1982, and I love watching France play, and I love watching Brazil play. But when you look at the technique of the Italians who won the World Cup in 1982, they were solid as a defence, and they had Paulo Rossi who scored goals. and they got the balance right. And it's not always about the most skillful team. It's about the team that's the cleverest and has the best balance. So when you're selecting your players, you can't pick all forwards. You have to pick 4 or 5 defenders or people who can work and run and create and make it difficult for the opposition so that you can allow the creative players, the 4 or 5 who are up front. So you get the balance, and it's always about a balance. And I think that's what life's about at the moment.
Like I wanted to ask you, I you didn't say it, I said it, like how that's the people want it, so the demand is there. Do you think like people want the lifestyle more than they want the game?
Probably because they envy the lifestyle of some of the superstars. They envy the lifestyle of the Cristiano Ronaldos and the Lionel Messis and the people who are in their mind. It depends. You've got. I found out that over the years, particularly when I worked in Asia, um, there's fans who will follow a player, and it might be David Beckham. And David Beckham, a lot of the people will follow him because he's a good player, but also because he's a fashion icon and because he dresses well and because he has a lot of charisma. And they would support Manchester United because David Beckham's there. But then when David Beckham moved to Real Madrid, they would follow David Beckham rather than support the club. Now I know there's players who there's fans who would support Manchester United from they were a boy till they're a man and always support Manchester United, and they'll get frustrated when they lose or when they don't play well. But that's the trials and tribulations of being a football fan. 1 minute your club's up and the next minute it's down. As a boy, I supported Leeds United, and Leeds were a good team. And I remember all the players who played then, Billy Bremner and Terry Cooper. And you had Johnny Giles and Peter Lorimer and Mick Jones and Alan Clark. These were all brilliant players in my mind. But then Leeds were out of the Premier League for 15, 20 years, and now they're back up again. So it's you take the highs and the lows, and every team goes through a bad period. In Spain, it's Real Madrid or Barcelona. It's one or the other. You're either a red, a white Madrid fan, or you're a claret and white Barcelona fan. It's one of those where you can't really have much of a choice unless you're a Basque and you're supporting Athletic Bilbao. But a lot of these clubs have not really changed. They have a philosophy where they want to play attractive football and entertain. And sometimes being entertaining is more important, I think, than winning. To play a style of football. Leeds were down for a long time, and Marcelo Bielsa, who's got them up, plays a style of football which is attacking and attractive and skillful, and that's something that I have to admire in a manager, and I think fans will follow him because of that. But everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has reasons why they would support a team or a player, and the fans ultimately dictate what happens.
Definitely, and it's quite contrasting. Like one of your former teams, Tottenham, they are not play, they're associated with more pragmatic football, and your boyhood club Leeds, they are like linked it more. Like we'll go down with the philosophy if we have to.
Yes, and it's funny because when I went to play for Tottenham Hotspur, it was exciting. I didn't know one when I went over if I was going to make it. I thought, well, these are really good players, and I don't know if I'm going to be good enough. But then when you settle down after a few months and you start understanding about the game and you understanding my own strengths and how I can make my strengths make me an important part of the team. And then you develop and you start to develop. And my first games, I played for Tottenham. And then I remember my first goal. My first goal in the league for Tottenham was against Leeds United at Ellen Road. And that was strange. But I was proud and pleased, one, that I'd scored for Tottenham. But then you're scoring against your boyhood team. But then that's my job. And we lost the game 2-1, but I scored. So part of me inside was saying, well, at least I scored. But then my team won, in one sense. So you have torn loyalties. And then the following year, I went back there and scored again, and we beat them 2-1. So these are the things that happen, and you evolve as a player, and you learn as you're older and you're developing. You learn a lot, and I found all of this out.
And like suppose that now it's been a long time since you played for Tottenham, and if today this year, whom would you support, Tottenham or Leeds?
It's funny now. I mean, I'm 66 now, and I played for Tottenham. I played for Watford. I played for Real Mallorca. I played for Brighton Hove Albion, West Bromwich Albion. Played for a lot of teams, and I look out for every single one of their results every week. It's funny, you have an association when you play for the club. There's an affinity, and I always look for Tottenham Hotspur's results. I always look for the Watford results, and I keep in touch. My teammates are not just Tottenham Hotspur players; they're my teammates. You know, I told you I spoke to Glenn Hoddle and Ozzy Ardiles. I spoke to John Barnes and I speak to Luther Blissett. You know, these are teammates from different clubs, but I still keep in touch with, you know, Guillaume Balaguer and the people in La Liga. And I'm going to do something for them tomorrow to commemorate the 90th year of La Liga. I'm going to be talking about my era playing for Real Mallorca in the 80s, and when I played against Diego Maradona and Bernd Schuster and Carrasco and a lot of the star players who were around in that time. So it's good that one, you learn and you develop, but also you still have an affinity and a love of the clubs that you play for and the people who obviously you meet when you're playing for the clubs.
Definitely, yeah. That's some huge, big names of the game that you have said, and probably you should try getting burned in your in your podcast if possible.
Well, I've had Ozzy Ardiles, as I said before. He's been on our show, and I'll bring on different guests. I've had Andy Gray and Richard Keys on because I worked with them when I was at Sky Sports, and they're funny guys. They're great guys, and they're great to work with. And we did a lot of shows. Andy Gray was a fabulous footballer, and you know, he was very unique. That he was the voted by the PFA the youngest player, and you have to be sort of 20, 21, 22 to win the Young Player Award. But he also won the Senior Player Award the same year. And, you know, he was a prolific goal scorer when he was at Aston Villa, and obviously won the FA Cup when he was at Everton against my old club, Watford. So it's good to communicate and talk to people like that who you have an affinity with. And I really enjoyed speaking to them. But then you go on to the other side of it. I love music, but I'm not particularly gifted when it comes to music. I don't play an instrument. I do a little bit of singing, but talking to superstars who are big in the pop world and to communicate with them, it's nice. You know, I'm fortunate enough. I know Rory McIlroy. I bumped into Rory. We've had conversations. We've met on different occasions. He lives in America now, but he's a person that if I saw him, we would recognize each other and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And these are the sort of the pluses from sportsmen in a different sport, you know, and you can communicate. I bump into rugby players, Irish international rugby players. I don't really know them, but we know each other, and there's an affinity. So it's I don't know what it is. It's just there's a really good feeling when you know it's another sports person or someone who has done well for your particular country. You know, we're a small country, Northern Ireland. We're like 1.8 million population, and yet you think of the superstars that we've had, you know, coming out of winning gold medals, snooker players, Alex Higgins and Dennis Taylor, you know, Johnny Ray, 5 times, 6 times world motor superbike champion in a row, which is unbelievable. And you look at the players that we produced in golf, like Rory McIlroy, who's won major titles, Darren Clark, Graham McDowell, all won majors. For a small country, we have a lot of big sports people. Mary Peters, I chatted to her on our show. She won an Olympic gold medal back in I think it was 1972 in Munich. And you know, she's a superstar for me. You know, to compete in those events and to win a gold medal at the Olympics is something special. But we keep producing more and more. And I don't know if it's the air, the water, the part of the world we live in, whatever it is, but we're a country that loves to compete, and we look after our sporting heroes.
Definitely, that's very nice to hear. So I'll touch on one part, like you, at least in terms of football, like you mentioned, like Northern Ireland have produced a lot of good sportsmen in general, not only in football, but in football generally. When you are playing, I think that was the golden generation, probably in terms of the history of Northern Ireland, and you played a very big part in it. How was the era? Because it was like you were young and you were going to play in World Cups, which had not happened prior and has not happened after that. How was it era? Like, was it normal? Like, or what was it?
It's strange because when I started playing in 1975, Northern Ireland had only qualified for the World Cup once, and that was back in 1958. And that was the days of Danny Blanchflower. And of course, we had some very good players. Peter Doherty was a fantastic player, and Bertie Peacock, another fantastic player. We had lots of good players, and we managed to get to the World Cup finals in Sweden. So that was a huge achievement. As a small country in the qualifying stages, we had to play against Scotland, Portugal, Sweden, Israel, and only 2 teams qualified. So for us to qualify along with Scotland was a huge success. Um, Going to Spain, nobody really gave us much chance. But in 1980, the team that had been built by Billy Bingham and partly by Danny Blanchflower started to evolve. The likes of myself, who I was getting older and I'd had maybe 15 or 20 international games under my belt. David McCreary, who played for Manchester United, was starting to evolve. He was a younger player. Billy Hamilton, who had played for Queen's Park Rangers and Burnley, was starting to evolve. Sammy McIlroy was a big part of Manchester United. Martin O'Neill had already won medals for Nottingham Forest in the Champions League and League. So the team was evolving, and we were lucky that we had a fantastic world-class goalkeeper in Pat Jennings. And we were also hoping that George Best, who was world-class, who was best in the world for a long time, he was going to be playing, but he was playing in America at the time. So the team was developing and taking shape. And in 82, to qualify was a huge success for Northern Ireland. To get to the quarterfinals and to beat Spain, and obviously to lose in the quarterfinals to France when we could possibly even have went through in that game. But it was an achievement. And then in 1984, 2 years later, we won the British Championships again. And then in 1986, we qualified again for the World Cup finals in Mexico in the same group as England and Romania. I mean, for us to qualify in 86 was unbelievable again. So you build up a belief and a camaraderie, and we had a squad of players, and we were fortunate that we didn't get too many injuries because the squad wasn't big, but the key players were always available. And, you know, Norman Whiteside in 82, he became the youngest player ever to play in the World Cup, and I don't think that'll ever be beaten. And Norman then went on and played in the 86 World Cup. And so we had some really talented players coming through, but we were a good unit and we believed in ourselves. And I think belief is so important. So we had we had skills, but we were a hard team to play against. We were really difficult to score against. And we knew that if we had 4, 5, 6 chances in a game, we would score. We'd score one of them, you know. So we always given ourselves a chance. So as the time progressed, we did really well. And that era, that 6-year era you talked about, we never lost a game at Windsor Park. That makes you feel really good about playing home games, and you have a lot of belief. And the fans got behind us. The fans, you know, were 100% behind us, and they lifted us. You know, when you were coming home to play, it was a really good feeling. And teams didn't want to come and play us. You know, we played Germany in Belfast and beat them 1-0, and they were shocked. So 6 months later, we went to Hamburg to play them in the European Championships, and we beat them 1-0 again. And I don't think any other country in the world has ever done that. But we beat Portugal there, we beat Spain there, we've beaten some really big nations who have come to play against us. And you know, that's the sort of team you want to have, and that's the sort of belief you want to have in your fellow countrymen. And it was a great era for me to play that 6 years. And I played for nearly 10 years, as you said, but that 6 years was particularly good. And to win the British Championships twice, to qualify for the World Cup twice was great. And I won the Golden Boot as the best British player in the 82 World Cup as well. So those were all pluses. And it's something you dream about, but you don't actually think it's going to happen. But you have to believe. And we had that belief.
And I didn't understand. Like you said, like how you won the best golden boot for the best British. Did you have like a separate cup only for the British thing when
Yeah.
probably? Okay, I did not know that. What was
Yeah,
that?
the British Champ. It's not on anymore. It finished in 1984, and it was between Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So it was the British Championships, and it was the 4 teams. And England used to win it most times, and if they didn't win it, then Scotland would win it because they would be the next strongest team and group. And they had fantastic players, Scotland, like Kenny Dalglish, and you look at the players they produced over the years. But then Wales were a decent team, and Northern Ireland were a decent team. But for us to win that competition twice in a 4-year period, and that was at our peak. That's when we were playing our best football, and nobody wanted to play against us because we were a good team. So we were at our peak, and it's a great feeling, and it's great to be proud that you could achieve that. And the fans got behind us 100%. And our country was going through turmoil with a lot of the terrorist bombings and the troubles that were going on in Northern Ireland. And for us to lift the whole of the country at that time was it was a great feeling for us, particularly as players, that we could help our fellow countrymen.
Definitely. And you all qualified for two back-to-back World Cups, so that is not a one-off. So that you can write off, okay, this is a one-off. What has happened since then? It's been a long time. So what? How?
Well, Shubhashish, it's one of those where you have players who develop, and you need to have a professional league, on a regular basis where players can develop. But we've never had a professional league in Northern Ireland. It's always been an amateur league, and it's semi-professional. So it's got probably better over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. But in that period of time, we didn't have the infrastructure, we didn't have the support, and we've tried to do our best, and we have started producing players. But it comes in eras. You have like 15 or 20 years, suddenly there's maybe 5 or 6 really good players come through, but that's not enough. You need to have 15, 16 at least, because you've got 11 who are going to play, and you need your subs as well, who are so important, and you need a squad. And we're starting to develop more young players. It's getting better, but the others are getting better as well. England's getting stronger. They're developing better players. Spain are developing better players. Their leagues are much stronger than our league. So, and in my era, the players who left Northern Ireland used to go and play for Tottenham or Arsenal or Liverpool. They were going to big clubs, Manchester United. But now you've got a situation where most of the players who leave Ireland are going to Scotland, are going to Scotland, or they're going to parts of England, but not Premier League clubs. They're not all going to Liverpool's, and they're not all going to the big clubs. They're going to the smaller clubs. So they're playing at a lower standard of football, and that's also difficult, for our national side to try and improve on what we did. I'm not sure, because the cards are stacked against us. I still believe. Well, 2 years ago, we qualified for the European Championships in France, and that was a major, major success. And the players did brilliant to get there, and they did well too. They beat Ukraine in the second or third game, which was fantastic to go through to the knockout stages. So that was a huge achievement for a small country. So you have to think big. You do have to think big, and then see how high you can go. But it'll come again. I do believe it will come round again. I think it comes in cycles.
Definitely, and hopefully it happens. And like you said, like you scored against Spain, and then you had gone to Mallorca and from Watford. And I don't think that was a very common move to go from England to maybe Spain.
It wasn't Shubhashish, I have to say. No, everybody was going to go
How?
from England. They were
Why
going.
did
They were
that
going to
happen,
Italy.
or how did that is true?
Well, I don't know. It came about because, one, I broke my leg the first season after we were promoted, Watford, and we were flying. We were going really well. We'd won 5 or 6 games in a row in the old first division, which was the top flight then, and we'd beaten Everton, and we'd beaten Southampton, and we beat everybody, and we were going really well. So I remember when I broke my ankle and my leg, I was out for 3 months, and I came back, and you're trying to put it into perspective. I was 29 then. I thought I've probably only got 3 or 4 years left as a professional footballer, trying to make the most of it. And I wanted to just get fit and get playing again. And then an inquiry came in from Real Mallorca, and they made a big offer for me. And the club said, if you want to speak to them, speak to them. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. And it was another opportunity to try something different, and nobody had gone really to Spain. Everybody was going to Italy. At the same year I went to Spain, Luther Blissett went to Milan, and that's where most of the British players were going. But Spain was intriguing, and the island of Mallorca, I went and visited the club, and I loved the island and liked the people, but I have to learn another language, so I had to learn Spanish, because they weren't all going to speak English. So I had to learn Spanish, which was a challenge. And it was good. It was good for me. I really enjoyed it. And I found out a lot about the Spanish La Liga. And as a result of that, it led me into a career commentating for over 20 years on La Liga. So it was a good decision.
Definitely. And like the word Mallorca stands out to me because I couldn't pronounce it before. But then after my Spanish classes, I could pronounce it because that's how you, there's the way how you pronounce a double L, like Mallorca. So that's like
Elia,
something, yeah, yeah. So that is something
Elia,
that always
Elia.
sticks to my mind. Yeah, yeah. And double R, like and so
Elia,
that's
yeah.
like, yeah.
But
So
that,
like,
no, it's good. It's good. But I mean, I love my time in Spain. I love my time at Real Mallorca. It was fun, and on the island of Mallorca, the people, because you play for their island, for their team, they're 100% behind you. But when you go to the mainland, and I went back to Valencia in the October November of my first season at Mallorca, which is where we beat Spain 1-0, and I'd scored the goal. My Spanish wasn't really up to date after 2 3 months. It took me a while, and the players, when we were getting off the coach to go into the stadium in Valencia, the players let me get off first, and I didn't know there was a reception waiting for me. So they threw oranges, apples, bananas, you name it. They threw everything at me because I'd sort of knocked the Spanish national team out. So I got a warm reception, you could say. But I was quite happy because we were losing 2-1 in that game, and I scored the equalising goal in the same goal that I scored against Spain. So I come off the pitch with a smile on my face again.
so it was a happy ending for you at least. Like you had the last laugh.
Good memories, last laugh, absolutely. But it was a learning thing as well. Playing Spanish football was a different type of football totally to England. England was more aggressive and more robust and physical, and the Spanish game was a lot more technical. And that was one of the things I learned in my 2 years at Real Mallorca, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
And definitely after Mallorca, you came back to England with Brighton and many other teams. And you also had spells as a player manager. Like, how was that?
Well, as you're getting older, at 32, 33, you start doing your coaching badges. And I was doing my coaching badges and looking to go into coaching. I love training and I love keeping fit. And I was very enthusiastic. So I joined the likes of Peter Reid and lots of other players who were coming towards the end of their careers, who wanted to become managers or coaches. And it was fun. It's fun. It's always great when there's a camaraderie with players, football players, and you go and play football and you're competing against each other on the pitch. But afterwards, when the game's over, you go and buy each other a drink and go to the bar and talk about the game and maybe what it could have been and how you should have done this or should have done that. It's great to discuss it, and that's the sort of camaraderie you have with a lot of the players. And I was looking forward to that, and I was at Brighton and I became a coach there. And then after that, I became a coach at Crawley and different clubs. And then I was assistant manager with Northern Ireland on two separate occasions for 4 years with Brian Hamilton and the second time with Laurie Sanchez. So those are all great experiences to be able to go back and coach and put something back into the game. That's something I really enjoyed as well.
Like, can we see you ever again in the management role or something, or is it gone?
Not necessarily. I mean, I haven't managed for like 10, 15 years now. It is since I was coaching and managing Northern Ireland. But I've never say never. It's one of those where I like doing what I'm doing in the as a football pundit or an analyzer or a commentator. I like that side of it, and I've been doing that probably longer now. I'm probably doing that for 25, 30 years now. So it's something that probably I'm more accustomed to, and I'll probably have more opportunities to do the commentating and the analysing of football. But and there's not a real demand for me to do anything. It's just keeping taking over, and I don't want to do too much. I don't want to keep myself really busy. I like to have some free time, and I like to have my own hobbies and spend time with my family, which is something as a football player you don't get an awful lot of opportunities. You're training all the time, and then most weekends you're away. Friday, Saturday, Sunday you're away playing football. So I'm enjoying watching my youngest daughter growing up and spending more time with my wife.
Definitely. Like one particular question I wanted to ask you was like, although you touched on it a bit, we started speaking like in the beginning about like how many people in Asia, because of your time here, whatever you spent in Asia, you see like people supporting particular player, maybe probably because of his lifestyle or off the field antics more than the on the field antics. And one particular person who probably is can be classified as the first person to ever grace that role was George Best. He was more than just on field. And you, in your debut for I think Northern Ireland, you played with him. How was it playing against him? Playing with him, sorry.
One, I was told the night before by the manager, Danny Blanchflower. He said to me in Germany, in Cologne, he said, "Look, I'm going to give you your debut tomorrow. You're going to be playing for Northern Ireland." And I was very proud. One, that he was telling me I was playing for my country. But then he told me I was going to be playing up front with George Best, which was like a boyhood hero. And it was like all your dreams come true. And I was just glad I was in the same side as George. But George was a great guy. Always fun to be around. Had unbelievable skill, unbelievable ability, and it was just Harry if he fancied it on the day. And you find that with a lot of geniuses. Whether it doesn't matter what sport it is, whether it's snooker or what the sport is. If they want to do it on that day and their mindset is good, there's very little you can do about it. I found that out against Maradona when I played against him for the first time, and I played against Johan Cruyff, and I played against Michel Platini. And when you're playing against these players that they're special and they've got special ability. So, I was really proud and pleased. But I got to know George really well over the years. We worked together at Sky Sports, and he was a pundit as well, and he was a lot of fun. Then we coached together in America, and I spent time with him in America, months, and had a lot of fun with him as well. But he was good company. He had it really difficult because there was no other player in the 60s was scrutinized and put under the pressure that he was. He was the big superstar, and he was still very young. And nobody had been put under the pressure that he'd been put under. And he was this forerunner for what's happening now. The players, the superstars like Messi and Ronaldo and co, they owe a big debt of thanks to George Best because he was the fifth Beatle. He was the fifth Beatle, and he took an awful lot of pressure on himself. And he could cope with it most of the time, but I was there with them, and the press and the demand from the fans are just so constant, putting him under pressure all the time. And he was always trying to help and appease everybody, but you can't do it. It's just impossible. And he wanted to get away from it all. And that's why I'd love to see him play at 26, 27, 28 in British football at the top flight. He was a superstar before he left, but he was disappointed, and he just wanted to get away from the pressure. And I'd love to see him play in the World Cup with me in 1982. I would really have loved to see George, and that would have given him such a lift to play in a World Cup final. So, that's something I wish I wish we could have had him in the squad for sure.
Like since I personally did not get to see him, how was he like? If you had to make a comparison to any particular player, any resemblance, like any particular player playing right now, how would George Best be like?
He was unique in the sense that he was two-footed, and George could run, he could sprint, he could head a ball, he could jump and head a ball. He was a brilliant athlete, but he had this touch on both feet, and he could dribble with both feet, and he could score with both feet. And he was a real character because sometimes he got to the stage where he didn't want to just beat you. He wanted to beat you twice or three times, and he really was, he was so unique. And the closest I could say in years that I've seen, and I've seen Maradona, who was sensational, but I've seen Messi, and Messi, George didn't really get to see Messi. George died, before Messi was at his top of his peak. And George would have loved Messi because Messi was his type of player. Messi would go past one, two, three players. He would nutmeg them. He would play a wall pass off their shins and go past them. He was so quick-minded, and he could see things that nobody else could see. He had that low center of gravity. But George, as I say, he was like a dancer. He was like a ballerina, and he had this balance. He could go. I watched him in training, and his body, you'd think he's going to fall over because he would move to the left, and he was like 45 degrees, and you think he's going to fall. But then he would push and kick back the other way, and the defender's going one way and he's going the other. He had this off to a T, and I'd never seen any player in my era in the 70s who could do that. but George could do it, and he had it off to a T. He was sensational.
Definitely. So we are getting to the end, and I have three more questions before we wrap up. And the first one is, of course, I think you would have got this a lot. The toughest player you played against.
I played against a lot of tough players, tough competitors. The fairest and the but toughest would have been Dave Watson. He was a really good defender because Dave used to be a centre forward. And I played as a defender as well for Tottenham. I played probably more games as a centre half than I did as a centre forward for Spurs. And I played at right back, I played midfield, but he was a really good competitor. Kenny Burns was another one who played for Nottingham Forest, very good competitors. But then when I came to Spain, I played against Miguel, and and he was a really tough character. Miguel, his nickname was Tarzan, and then the Butcher of Bilbao. I played against him, who was another. So you had a lot of tough players in different leagues, but they're all competitive. They're all tough, but it's like you give as good as you take. And that's what I like to think I did. Whenever anybody came hard on me, I always responded and gave it back just as hard.
Definitely. So the second last question is like, do you have any one particular game that lives in your memory till now? Maybe for good or bad reasons. Any one game throughout your career?
There's lots of games, and it's funny because when I was at Spurs, I felt a lot of pressure at Spurs. We used to play in front of 55, 60,000 people, and there was games I remember not playing particularly well. And there was one game against Swindon in the FA Cup, and I remember I think I gave a penalty away, and I didn't think it was a penalty, but obviously they gave the penalty kick. The referee gave it, but it was one of those where things weren't going well, and in the second half. I could hear that the fans were really getting to me, and I could feel that they wanted me to be taken off because there was a substitution being made, and the substitute wasn't me. They took Chris Jones off instead, I think, and I was still on, and there was 20 minutes to go, and we were losing 1-0 to Swindon, and I remember scoring twice. Two good goals. One was a volley from outside the box, and then the next one, 5 minutes later, just before full time, was a header from across, and I headed into the back of net, and we won 2-1. And I remember the fans cheering me and coming off and applauding, and I was thinking they were booing me until I scored the first goal and the second goal, and then I come off the pitch. And I'm a very honest person. So when I was interviewed by Brian Moore afterwards, I actually said, look, wasn't one of my best games, but I managed to score 2 goals at the end. And maybe the fans will be happy with me now because it wasn't particularly good. So that was one thing that stuck in my mind, and it helps you to develop as a person and as a player. But then the match that stands out for all reasons is going to be the World Cup. To play on that platform in a game that you have to win against the host nation, who are the favourites to win the competition, not just the game, and to beat them 1-0 and to score the winning goal. I don't think it gets better than that.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, like that would be a dream for anyone, like let alone like score, play in a World Cup to score and to score against a host nation to eliminate them. That's like altogether different ballpark. So we'll wrap it up with one final question. And, you have had so much experience playing in different World Cups, like we already spoke, different competitions, multiple decades. If you had to give a piece of advice, or I wouldn't say a piece of advice, something that you would give advice to yourself. Suppose if you're restarting your career, what advice would you give?
Just enjoy it and try not to put yourself under too much pressure, because there's an awful lot of pressure in whatever walk of life you are. It's your business, if it's your job, if it's your profession, if you're a boxer, if you're a rugby player or a cricketer or a footballer, just enjoy it. And I think if you enjoy it, you'll do it well, and because you'll want to do it. I love training. I really did love training, and my training helped me, I think, physically to be 100% fit getting into a game is so important. And I know that most of the games I played, I always had some sort of an injury, but I just wanted to play. And it's the enthusiasm and the determination of, I want to be fit, I want to play. You always want to compete, and I just think enjoy it, whatever you do, whether it's a singer or an actor or whatever. Have fun, enjoy it.
Definitely. And like on that note, Jerry, thank you so much for talking to me and giving me your precious time, to come on the show. And hope you continue with your podcast, which is amazing, and have more guests, maybe properly more of football, because I follow football more than other walks of life, and probably I can follow them. And if anyone is listening, you can join in every Thursday 8 p.m. UK time, or you can maybe follow up because it's there like recorded and put out. I think the following day, any
on YouTube.
after the yeah, on YouTube. By what name is the channel?
Gerry and Friends.
Okay, Jerry and Friends. So you can go and check that out. So Jerry, thank you so much for talking to me, and hope to talk to you again soon. Till then, take care, stay safe. Bye. Thank you so much once again.